Hey guys, it's Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Pioneer. Yes, that's right, Pioneer, a new MTG format, basically based around, well, kind of like a new standard, super standard, kind of extended-y sort of thing, except it doesn't rotate like extended, so it's kind of like modern, but it's not like modern. Kind of confusing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, so here we go. Looks like we got pretty much all the sets here as it is currently. Throne of Eldraine being the most current one, everything forward from that. And then also starting from the Return to Ravnica set. And we only have 5 cards banned, the 5 allied fetch lands. This is good because obviously the fetch shock mana base lets you pretty much play like 3 colors pretty easily. Not a lot of problems there. So they want to actually have you think about your mana bases a little bit more, which is understandable. I can totally get that. So yeah, and plus, I mean, Modern already has the fetch shock thing going on anyway, so it's like, well, maybe let's try something a little bit different. Also, fetch lands enable a lot of stupid shit, like, well, I guess a lot of stuff we'll talk about in the next few minutes. But yeah, so this is basically kind of like modern Magic, the format, or at least the sort of modern-ish, boom of Magic starting around Return to Ravnica when there's a lot of new people and a lot of different direction in the way that things are designed and made and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, well, this is an interesting idea, so I guess I'm of two minds about it, but I think it's kind of interesting. Certainly doesn't really hurt any older formats. Kind of gives modern a little bit of competition, but also not in a lot of ways because there's a lot of big differences. This format doesn't have Innistrad or ZENDIKAR, so those are pretty big, pretty important. Or either of the previous two Mirrodin blocks, which is also a big deal. A lot of really important blocks, a lot of really important cards aren't available here. But yeah, so that definitely makes it interesting. Definitely gives it another niche. Definitely makes it a lot cheaper. That's for dang sure. Okay, so there are a lot of cards that aren't banned here. Notably, the Delve spells like Treasure Cruise, or other things that play off like filled graveyards, like Deathrite Shaman, that are a lot weaker. Dig Through Time's a little better because it's an instant and you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn, stuff like that. But I don't think it's really going to be broken because a lot of these things are really fueled by super cheap spells, which there's not really very many. Super powerful cantrips, which there are literally none. Opt, I'm not going to say is a super powerful cantrip. And fetch lands, of course, but they're banned, and if they're ever printed in a standard set, I imagine the enemy fetches would be banned too. Yeah, so the interaction is a lot weaker, but the threats are also somewhat weaker too. You just have less enablers for linear style decks, combo decks, things like that. So that's kind of nice, kind of interesting. Tends to sort of slow things down. And a lot of people criticize this format as being like a super standard, so to speak. I mean, I'm not 100% sure about how true that is, but it is true to some extent. That's pretty much the starting line. People just try jamming like old standard decks and then throwing new cards in there or whatnot. So not a bad place to be. Control seems a lot worse. A lot of the counter magic is not so good, and then a lot of the removal is quite a bit worse too. I mean, you still have pretty strong planeswalkers and stuff like that. Controls definitely seems, at least until the meta seems settles down, is more, actually, well, until we actually know what you're going to be metagaming against. Control seems a little weak, a little bit weak, but I wouldn't count it out yet. Yeah, not quite yet. So we got a couple of different archetypes, things that I think would you probably wanna go to originally. So we got a Atarka Red and Ramunap Red. Atarka Red being like the prowess deck that played like Tarkus Command, and Ramunap Red, the most recent mono red deck, played a bunch of deserts and Ramunap Ruins and Hazaret and Rampage and Froston, all that good stuff. Powerful, aggressive decks with, I mean, sort of decent removal, I guess. I mean, you're basically using shock or things that are kind of like shock, which is, I mean, whatever. Obviously, no bolts in this format. So, I mean, yeah, your one drops and one drop interaction's a lot worse. But I mean, Monastery Swift Spear is pretty good. You still have Idol on the Great Revolt, that's pretty good. And then Soulscar Mage with things like, say, Goblin Chain Whirler is pretty sweet too. So, a lot of things you could do there. I'd probably want to go with something with a little more of a mid-rangey red thing going on with Ramunap Red. Playing some of the, was it Scorching Deserts? Those are the colorless deserts that come into play and make them take a damage or something. Something like that, that's pretty sweet. For control decks, you have probably the Sphinx's Revelation sort of style decks, the blue-white style control decks. I mean, your options for removal aren't that great, but I mean, at least you have Teferi and Seal Away, and Small Teferi, and let's see, Big Teferi, Small Teferi. Is that it? I mean, at least that's like the best ones I can think of. Being a mono Black Devotion, that's definitely sort of a kind of a board control sort of thing. But mono black has good disruption, good interaction, and dropping like a gray merchant with all your black mana symbols and stuff in play, pretty sweet, pretty great against the aggro decks. That's a lot of life gain, pretty sweet. Then we got mono blue Devotion, which is well, it's kind of like an aggro control deck. It doesn't play a ton of interaction, but basically just the old mono blue Devotion from like Theros standard. So that's kind of interesting and pretty sweet. Andrea Mangucci had a mono blue Devotion deck that he just put up recently. That looked pretty good. I'd probably start with something from there. Yeah, that seems like an interesting start. I like mono blue Devotion. I don't know. I like any mono blue deck that plays Mutavault. That's pretty sweet. A bunch of dorks, some interaction, dive down, spell pierces. That's good stuff. That's the only deck I can think of that's like an aggro control deck. And then for combo, you have the Copycat deck, which was the deck that was banned during like the Kaladesh standard. The Aetherworks Marvel decks, again, same thing, banned during Kaladesh standard, and of course the Jeskai Ascendancy decks that were pretty big a while ago. Jeskai Ascendancy, pretty strong, pretty sweet, pretty powerful. Definitely have a pretty good mana base. A lot better than, well, no, I guess it's basically pretty similar to the old modern decks. Yeah, so these are all pretty sweet, pretty awesome combo decks at least as like a starting point. I think these are definitely pretty strong. I mean, I've seen a lot of different versions of each. Like some of the Aetherworks Marvel decks, you put like the Aetherworks Marvel in like just the Temur shell or the Sultai shell or whatever. But speaking of energy, it's one of the mid-range decks that I'm more interested in. The only problem is like it's, you don't really get a lot of upgrades because so much of your deck is like filled with well, energy cards, and there's only a couple sets with that. So it's interesting though, pretty interesting. I like the deck, I like the cards. I mean, any chance I can use to cast a Glorybringer is probably pretty sweet, so I like that. I mean, it's just the deck seems, I mean, it's got a couple upgrades. And that's pretty sweet. I don't know, I just wanted to play energy. And a lot of the deck is really cheap. Rogue Refiners and the Tomb with Ethers and all that good stuff. Especially since there's not a lot of overlap. That's kind of cool. So yeah, that's definitely attractive to me. Whether you want to play Bug or Rug energy, I'm not 100% sure, but pretty sweet. And there's obviously just tons and tons of other like 3-color good stuff style decks. Anything with like Siege Rhino, any of the Abzan Siege Rhino style decks, and all sorts of other things. I mean, those will certainly be pretty popular. All right, so this format kind of feels like how Extended was before they rotated it out, where it's kind of like a super standard. And that's sort of how it feels like to me, but obviously this format doesn't rotate. So we'll eventually probably have to deal with, maybe if not immediately, have to deal with just the bullshit with linear decks getting better with bigger card sets, and then regular, happy, normal, magical decks to just play dudes and beat down or counter spells or whatever. They'll just be worse. I mean, this is the typical life cycle of any sort of format. I mean, really, for the most part, it doesn't really tend to deviate too much from that. But I mean, that's just, it is what it is. Whatever. But let's enjoy it for the time being. It looks pretty fun. And looks like the best removal and interaction is black. So you have Thoughtseize, Abrupt Decay, Collective Brutality, Assassin's Trophy, all that kind of good stuff. Even like Vraska's Contempt, stuff like that, to help you deal with indestructible things like the gods or annoying creatures. Stuff like Wicked Wolf, I guess. Obviously Oko and Friends are pretty sweet in this format, especially since you can play Llanowar Elves to really make sure you always have that turn 2 Oko. Thank God, right? Yeah, so black, or base black, is definitely a good start for your mid-range decks. Just like playing a bunch of like removal and thought seizes and stuff like that, and then just jamming a Siege Rhino. Probably not the worst idea at the moment. I think I could definitely endorse that. I think the best counterspell is Disallow, or runner up to maybe Negate. Not exactly the best place to be in. Looks like there's a lot of really fast aggressive decks and stuff. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really want to play like a sort of like reactive sort of draw go style of blue deck. It just seems even less viable here than in Modern, and in Modern it's not good either. So that should tell you something. So yeah, don't do that. Looks like Fatal Push, I think, is the only good 1-mana removal spell because we don't have Bolt or Path. So Push is pretty good, but Push itself is a lot weaker because we don't have fetch lanes to turn on the Revolt. So that could be a problem. So yeah, this format looks, I mean, outside maybe like 1 or 2 combos which may or may not to get cards banned, it looks like there's just a ton of things that are it's just kind of a mid-rangey good stuff format, at least in the beginning. Kind of like how Modern sort of was for a while, after they banned a lot of stuff. Yeah, kind of weird. I mean, it seems like kind of a fun format. There's definitely like a lot of old standard decks that people would want to try and play again. Everyone likes Pack Rat, right? That's pretty fun, So I guess we'll see. I'm not 100% sure. I've seen all sorts of different things. I mean, it's hard to say what I think is going to work or what not, but it seems like an interesting format. Will anything get banned? I don't know. I've heard all sorts of different opinions and stuff. I haven't played the format personally since they announced it, so I couldn't say. I mean, it seems kind of interesting. I guess I could like playing with just random old standard decks. Although a lot of these old standard formats just don't really have decks that I really want to play because I don't care about them. Mostly just because these decks just feel underpowered. I'm like, yeah, I can't even play Counterspell. Like, why do I want to play these decks? But don't let me be a negative Nancy. It looks like everything's kind of interesting, so we'll probably check in with this format at a later date. But at the moment, I mean, it looks kind of like a mid-range grindy fest, as long as there's no like ridiculous combo, because it just seems there's a lot of shit to slow down aggro decks, not a lot of really good removal. So it seems like just the best answer is just playing your own dorks and planeswalkers and stuff, and kind of grindy mid-range central. But we'll see how it works. I don't know. These are just some of my my first thoughts. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So that's it for now, guys. I'll check in with this format later. We'll talk about a little bit more Pioneer at a later date. But this is my first my first thoughts for the first week or so of the format's existence. So that's it. That's all there is. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and have a great day.